A massive blow for the Albanese government today after Donald Trump slapped a base tariff rate of 10% on Australia as part of Liberation Day.
With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. It's brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone.
The Prime Minister had this to say in response.
The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend.
And this is how Opposition Leader Peter Dutton responded.
The focus that we should have as a government and as an alternative government is to do a deal on that basis as quickly as possible so that we can reduce the impact on Australians, on our industry and on our export capability.
Joining me now for more on this is Sky News contributor Gary Hardgrave. Gary, none of this should be a surprise. This is the America First policy Trump campaigned on, and the Albanese government has botched the response. Donald Trump is not even taking Anthony Albanese's phone calls. He'd know well what Australian politicians, including the Prime Minister and his ministers, have said about him over the years, and that hasn't helped our case.
Look, it hasn't. There's no doubt about that. There is not a strong relationship between this Prime Minister and that President, and it's been set up by this Prime Minister. The blurting of all sorts of insults to him years ago is just really coming home to roost. But Rita, we also started a lot of this. You know, we started to bring in things like a GST on imported items that you brought through on mail order out of places like the United States. So, you know, from their point of view, they're saying, well, you know, you brought in a 10% tariff on us, which is what basically they're seeing it as. So here's one on you. Look, you know, our farmers are in real peril, and we should, I think, move this conversation on to what is really coming their way. The real cost to our farmers is the high cost of electricity, the high cost of government regulation and red tape. This is a government, the Albanese government, that likes to just find new taxes to hurt people in new ways. They really don't have any commitment to the agricultural sector, for instance. They're talking about the same thing Kamala Harris talked about last year, and that is to have an unrealised capital gains tax. What's the first thing that they're targeting? Farmers. So if you own a block of dirt and you graze on it, the tax office each year is going to actually look and say what the value of that dirt is. And by the way, we're going to take a percentage off you. These are the sorts of things we've got to get rid of, that and cheaper electricity prices. And until we do, and until we put Australia first, then frankly, we really have nothing to complain about. I mean, the Americans are looking after themselves. I don't like what Trump's done, but he's looking after himself. It's playing well in America until I guess the price of Big Macs go up. It probably will. But Rita, we are sitting lazily expecting the world to make a living for us. And until we start to look at how government costs and electricity prices are damaging all things in the supply chain, the production chain in this country, I don't think we're serious. The Prime Minister doesn't want you to look at that. He says, pick on Trump and vote against Dutton to send a message to Trump. This is crazy politics, crazy.
It is crazy policy. It's infantile. It's aimed at the low information voter, but we need an Australia first policy right here, and starting with our energy policy. That would be fantastic to see. I'll be speaking to Army Horowitz shortly about the tariffs a little bit more and what's to come next. Now to what is being described in the Australian newspaper as the ultimate David versus Goliath case. Rainforest Reserves Australia, a small charity based in North Queensland, is taking the federal government and an Andrew Forrest-backed renewable energy company to court over a planned 69-turbine wind farm located 5 kilometres from the Wet Tropics World Heritage Area. Gary, this project is set to involve the clearing of around 600 hectares of land, home to koalas and other vulnerable species. How did the Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, ever approve this project?
Well, amongst the many projects she approved within days of becoming the minister, this project stands out. There's another one near Lotus Creek, northwest of Rockhampton. I spoke to a conservationist, a photographer, yesterday on the radio on 4BC here in Brisbane, and he made that point that 180 koalas have already been displaced, and there is a project to put up $25 million wind turbines. This project is costing everybody a lot of money through higher electricity prices, but it's killing and wiping off the tops of mountains because there's not a great lot of breeze on the plains in Queensland compared to some other parts of the world, and yet they're applying a European standard to Australia. So they lop the top off the mountains, they kill off the koala habitat, they pollute the creeks with all the debris that gets thrown down in the creeks, that washes out on the Great Barrier Reef. And Rita, they don't have to follow any of the environmental laws every farmer, every householder, every other council, whatever around Australia has to follow. Renewable energy proprietors can do what they darn well like to the environment, and the federal government, Plibersek in particular, Bowen as well, but Albo's allowing it to happen, have just signed off on it. They just don't get it. And the one at Lotus Creek near Rockhampton is going to produce 0.5% of the electricity needs of Queensland. This is just horrendous, and we should be angry about it.
Absolutely, and to see Tanya Plibersek approve a renewable project like this is just going to destroy hundreds of hectares of forest, but she then rejects a $1 billion gold mine on the basis of a contested Indigenous blue-banded bee story, a project that would have provided hundreds of millions in royalties to the New South Wales government, hundreds of well-paid jobs in a regional area that desperately needs it. It is madness. Now, before you go, I'm interested in your take on this. Watch here as a female fencer, Stephanie Turner, was immediately disqualified and expelled from a USA fencing event after she refused to compete against a transgender opponent, Redmond Sullivan, who used to compete in the men's competition. She took a knee. Gary, I absolutely applaud her stance here. Every female athlete should do something similar. Shame on the sporting body there for punishing her the way they have. But it is just patently unfair to expect a female athlete to compete at an elite level, any level, against a competitor that identifies as female but is biologically male.
Yeah, no, she's a new hero of mine. Rita, I found this out at primary school. You know, in year 3, the boys didn't compete against the girls. The girls had their comp, the boys had theirs, because the boys were going to play a different game to the girls. What's changed? Nothing, except the wokeness that's destroying civil society across the West. It's crazy stuff.
Gary Hardgrave, thank you so much for your time.